One of the beauties, I think, of this industry is you don't necessarily have to go to school in order to be successful. But you start as a garde manger cook, you start as a dishwasher, you start as something at the bottom, you learn that, you go up to the next and wash and repeat. Because if you don't understand how to actively do every single part of it, then you're not going to be that successful. That being said, I am horrible at making cocktails. And I realized that. So also, which is, I know something we had touched on before, was, hiring the people that know how to do the things that you can't.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, co-owner of Central Provisions, Tipo, and Finestkind, Paige Gould. My lady, Paige, are you feeling unstoppable today?
So unstoppable.
I'm psyched to have you on the show. It's been more than twice the amount of content since I've had you on last. Your episode 547. It was 2018 when I last had you on the show. Today, this is going to be episode 1155. One of the lessons I've learned, it's not about how many people you know, but it's about knowing the right people and growing those relationships. So that's why I asked you to come back on the show. You're one of the greatest hits. I wanted to get you back. Before we kind of pick up where you are today, let's get that motivational, inspirational, ball rolling with a success quote or a mantra. What do you got for us?
Well, in order to just try to switch it up from what my quote was last time, I'll say consistency is key.
Consistency is key. Why is it so key?
Well, if you want to be able to develop those regulars and the people that keep on coming back for more, then you need to be able to have a consistent product that they can rely upon and know that every time they come back, it's going to be the same exact thing. And above and beyond that, with just the customers, also even with employees, consistency is key as well.
Yeah. And your last quote was employees first, guests second. Mm-hmm. And consistency is that hard or that easy. Like just keep showing up and work just as hard as you did yesterday, today, or harder, right? Mm-hmm. Easy, right? But it's also that hard.
Yeah, sure. It can be. But I mean, I think a good example that we use a lot of the times, at least for the guest-facing side, is that we have a recipe for a martini. We have a recipe for a margarita that we expect every single bartender in our establishments to follow, because there are different ways of making all of these things. But when you come to CP, and every time you come to CP or Finestkind or Tipo, wherever it is, we want you to know that you will get the same thing that you had last time.
Consistency. Yeah. And not only is it important because of guest expectation, but also with managing the numbers. Mm-hmm. It all comes back around. So, okay. Last time I had you on the show, you own Central Provision, Tipo, and you've opened a new restaurant. So
We're business partners, or minority business partners.
Is this the first time you're business partners with somebody?
Technically, we do have business partners in the other two places.
Investments?
As well. My in-laws are invested in both Tipo and Central Provisions, and then my dad and stepmom are invested in Tipo as well.
How many seats with Central Provisions?
How many seats in Central Provisions? 36 in the dining room, 20 in the bar.
Okay. Fine casual? How would you describe it?
Yeah, fine casual, full service, fine casual.
Tipo?
Tipo is an Italian restaurant, full service, more family, neighborhood oriented. Oh, right. Back to the original question. It's about 60 all day.
And Finestkind?
I don't know how many seats are in Finestkind, to be honest.
Ballpark, if you could guess.
I'll go with 25.
25?
Yeah.
Got it. Can you give us an idea of like prime costs and percentages and like margins you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for kitchen, we actually try to keep our percentage around 20%.
Okay.
Which I know is a lot lower than most places aim for. Usually about 30% is the norm. But we do bring in all of our animals whole. Not all of them, but we try to bring in animals whole, which brings down the revenue. But I would also, the cost. But when it comes down to it, we concentrate on having a low food cost because our labor cost is a lot higher.
So that's the next question. If you're doing 20% in the kitchen, what about front of house? Total, what's your total labor cost?
Our labor cost runs at about 60%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what about cost of goods?
Above and beyond just food cost. So as in like liquor costs and all of that kind of stuff, or like restaurant supplies and stuff like that.
I mean, I think we should get in the habit of grouping all that stuff together. It's the cost of doing business, right?
Sure. Just try to make sure that I knew exactly
I'd say all
what you were saying. I mean, full overhead, we run at about 60% for labor. As far as food costs, liquor, all of that, we run at about a 20 to 25%.
Okay.
It really depends on exactly where it is, but an average, I would say probably.
And you own the building.
We do.
So you don't have to worry about rent.
We
but
do.
You get
Well,
taxes.
no. We most certainly pay rent.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
To yourself?
Yes.
There you go.
Well, we have to pay rent because we have a mortgage.
Right.
And
That's
because there
fair.
are two separate places, we most
So
certainly
you don't
pay
own
rent.
it outright.
Actually, at this point, we do own Central Provisions outright.
Right. So, I mean, I would love to get into the economics of how you make that work. And then, again, my goal here isn't to like be a jerk. It's to really kind of learn, like, how do you like make it work? And I also think that one of the things I'm trying to fight against in the industry is we're so just like, people get in trouble because they don't know like what it takes. And I feel, and if I'm putting words into your mouth, I feel, don't let me, you can disagree. I think a lot of people get into this industry chasing the flash in the pan, the spotlight, the attention that you need from certain awards. I think you can't make it work unless you get the awards to drive the business to your restaurant. But you can get in trouble with your operational costs in chasing those awards.
Yeah.
So
110%.
Maybe we can bookmark that, or if you want to talk about it now.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like we kind of touched on that a little bit in our first interview when we talked about how a lot of people just want to go straight to being the top and don't want to put in the work in the beginning in order to be able to succeed and get to the top.
Right.
And a lot of times I do agree that people they want to skip that first step.
Right.
Sure. Who doesn't want to skip that first step? But the reality is that you need that first step in order to learn and understand how people are successful in order to be able to emulate it.
Yeah. I think about people who are first-time homeowners. They grew up in this beautiful house that their parents had, a huge home, 4 bedrooms, dining room, living room, family room, reading room, offices, finished basement. And they go, I want that too. Mm-hmm. And they get their nice job and they go straight out of the gates for the nice home and they overextend themselves. Your parents probably had remember the shitty house when you were a baby that you don't maybe remember? Like that was how they started. And then they paid that off and they used it as a down payment for the next house. You don't start with the dream. You work towards the dream. And going for the dream out of day one is a surefire way to like end your dream early.
I mean, I think I would say you should always be going for your dream.
Right.
From
But start
day
where you
one,
can.
but have a realization of where the starting line is.
That's what a vision is for.
Yeah, exactly. And having that dream and working towards it 110%, but realizing that you shouldn't skip steps along the way.
Yeah. Reflecting over the past 6 years, really, that's what we're here to do, is to reflect over the past 6 years. Hopefully some more nuggets on how your advice for like starting small and growing into it. Maybe you've learned a thing or two that will come out. Well, maybe we should just pick up where we left. Like, let's just start there, because I feel like what is your advice for people if they are chomping at the bit for the dream? Like, where do you start? How do you know where to start?
You start at the bottom.
What does that look like?
I mean, so one of the beauties I think of this industry is you don't necessarily have to go to school in order to be successful. But you start as a garde cook, you start as a dishwasher, you start as something at the bottom, you learn that, you go up to the next and wash and repeat. Because if you don't understand how to actively do every single part of it, then you're not going to be that successful. That being said, I am horrible at making cocktails. And I realized that. So also, which is, I know something we had touched on before, was, hiring the people that know how to do the things that you can't.
Right. Self-awareness, staying in your lane. What would you say your lane is?
My lane?
Yeah.
Oh, very specifically my lane. I'm very good at talking to people.
Yeah, you are.
And I'm very good at communicating. I'm very good at getting people to understand the bigger vision. And I'm also good at the numbers, and I'm good at the books, and I can understand all of that kind of stuff. And what I haven't known, I think I'm also good at having the moxie to believe that I can do whatever I want to do. And learning on Google is an amazing thing that I've done a lot.
Oh, I mean, I feel like almost like disillusion, right? But it's like a strength and a weakness.
Yeah.
Because it's like those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world actually do. What's that crazy
Yeah.
quote?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the concept that you can do whatever you want to do, but whether you're going to put the time and the effort to learn how to do it is up to you.
Yeah, and I think what it kind of reminds me of the quote of like ignorance is bliss. Like if you really knew how much work it was gonna be, would you have done it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not knowing, but thinking like anything's possible and just going for it and just consistency, like we started this conversation, it will happen. But it's not gonna be easy.
No.
Yeah. So over the past 6 years since we last had you on the show, 2018, you opened a third restaurant with partners.
We did.
Obviously there was the pandemic. I don't like to talk too much about the pandemic because
So it's overplayed.
It's overplayed. It's there. I think I would argue it made the industry stronger. It will happen. There was a camera nudged and we got worried. But how did you come out of the pandemic stronger? What are you doing today that you weren't doing prior to the pandemic that you think has galvanized you, made you stronger?
I mean, we did come out of the pandemic stronger because I developed a new hobby called Get as many grants as physically possible.
Okay.
And anything that was available when it came to the PPP and the RRF and all of that kind of stuff, I would actually train on how they would give us all of what the questionnaires that we were going to need to fill out ahead of time. And I would answer all of the questions. And then when it came to actually filling them out, I would copy and paste, and I would get through the whole thing that much faster because, especially with the RRF, so technically I am the landlord and the owner of the buildings, but my husband owns the businesses with business partners, as we discussed earlier. But when it came to the RRF, we weren't of economic disadvantage, we weren't a vet, and he's not a woman. So that put us at the very end of the line as far as getting picked for a first come, first serve situation. Knowing all of that information ahead of time, I made sure that the second it became live, in order for us to be able to sign up, we were there, I was there, I had practice. They had said that it should take you about 20 minutes to complete each form. I had both forms completed for both restaurants in under 5 minutes.
Wow.
I was not playing around.
So you put all, when the time came, you put all of your energy into really learning how to get the most out of the aid that was available to you. Became a hobby of yours, you said. Is this a hobby that has spilled over into are you still looking for, is there?
No, not as strongly. I would say my business partner, Victoria, is very good at that kind of stuff. And she's actually just alerted me of a new grant that's coming up that we can apply for as well. But
what is that?
It is through the state of Maine. It is a $30,000 grant you're eligible for to improve your restaurants and or open a new restaurant as well.
Do we need more restaurants in Maine?
I'm not the one to answer that question. That's not my decision to make.
Maybe don't answer it, but give your opinion.
I would say I've always been kind of in Maine in general. Yes, I would say absolutely.
We need more restaurants.
Listen, I live in Freeport. Yeah,
right.
We do.
Yeah.
I could use another restaurant up in Freeport. In the direct Portland area, there is a very high concentration of restaurants. And I've kind of always wondered what the tipping point is.
Is there oversaturation?
And what the saturation point is, and have we reached it, and are we going to get there, and what's going to happen when we get there? There has certainly been a significant amount of closures,
right,
within the last couple of months.
Is there a percentage that you're aware of?
I don't.
Do you have a guess?
I wouldn't even have the ability to guess. Yeah. But I know there has been several closures, but there's also still places still opening.
Yeah.
So who's to say? And I mean, even the new places that are opening, they're not necessarily going into the places that just closed. Some of them are creating complete new spaces. So I don't know. I don't really know. I think that's a revolving question of when we might hit that spot. But I know just personally that you have to fight to stay relevant. 11 years in, we're not the brand new shiny place anymore. But
that was one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. And I mean, you just need to make sure at Central Provisions, we change the menu frequently, but we also have things that always stay on the menu. So I think we always have new and exciting things for you to come and try and that are different, but we also still always have the tried and true that you want and that consistency. So I think a mix of the both is really key.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes too, I feel like all we know of restaurants, if you're alive today, like all you know of restaurants, is like the more traditional, like full service, like the 1905 business model. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think if you look beyond that time, maybe into like, I think probably around the 50s or 60s, there was more fragmentation of like bakers and pasta makers and butchers, and there was still food production, but it wasn't like a restaurant. It was like we specialize in one thing and we do retail and wholesale. Mm-hmm. Like I think a lot of I think a lot of the reason why we're in this situation is because retail has basically disappeared with the advent of, or the rise of Amazon. And like people ordering from like the Walmarts and the Amazons and the Targets of the world, they can go to the box store, they can get it delivered straight to them with one click. Mm-hmm. So retail just disappeared. Now you have all these people that own property, and the only thing that works in that property is experience-based businesses. And what is the most common one of those? Restaurants, right? So like, do you think it's an issue with consumers? Like maybe choosing to give their money, if they chose to give their money locally, like would it be more expensive? Yeah, but would it be better for the community? I wonder sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean it's always better for the community,
right?
But I mean I feel like I feel like I'm a little bit confused about the parallel that you're trying to make.
What I'm trying to say is if we opened more specialty shops or more, food prep, like how do we meet the consumer at different points with food instead of just a full service restaurant?
Well, it's funny you say that because I really want to have a pasta vending machine.
I don't know. I think we just have to like diversify is what I'm saying. I wonder if it's a matter of diversification. If you're passionate about food, do you open a restaurant or do you do the one thing you're truly passionate about? And do you serve your community with that one thing?
I think a lot of times, a lot of people end up failing because they only know how to do what they do really well. And they don't consider the money factor, and they don't consider the follow-up, and they don't consider how important the networking is, and they don't, and all of this other stuff. But I think the biggest problem is honestly the money management facet of it.
100%.
And if they don't truly understand the money management facet, then it's not going to work out.
How do you manage your restaurant's money?
When we very first opened, I had a separate bank account for all of our sales tax. So on a weekly basis, I would transfer all of the money that was sales tax into another one because that money's not mine.
Right.
I also, when payroll was set up, instead of having anybody who had a live check as opposed to a direct deposit, we have a trust set up where that money goes into that trust. So therefore, that money's not mine anymore. And I don't have the illusion that it's still in my bank account and that it still belongs to me.
So when you cut a check that isn't direct deposit, that check the money for that check
goes into a trust.
So you can't accidentally spend it.
Nope. I can't spend it. I can't anything. And then at the end of the year, I get a list of all of the checks that weren't cashed. And then I go and harass that employee make sure they cash them.
So you're allocating cash. You're basically using the envelope system, but instead of envelopes, you're using bank accounts.
Yep.
What else do you do?
Also making sure that when it comes to getting credits for returns and everything like that, that you are personally managing all of that, because nobody cares more about that $3.50 for that clamshell of time than you. And making sure you get that and that. But at the same time, create an honest relationship with your vendors. So all of the people that I work with, when it comes to paying bills, I've worked with them for years. And they know if I'm looking at something and a credit was given that I shouldn't have been gotten, I'm going to call them and say, hey, no, we don't need that credit. As much as if they didn't give us a credit, if I call, there's no conversation that really occurs. It's just me saying, hey, we didn't get this credit. And they say, okay, cool. And they give it to me because they know I'm honest and they know I'm not going to be looking for something that isn't true.
Yeah. Do you have a process for tracking credits?
So we actually have a whole little shorthand. When everything gets received, there's a shorthand for if something is being returned, what the return is for. So if it's like the wrong item, if it's poor quality, and so there's like 8 different things, and I can't tell you what all the shorthands are off the top of my head. But so that way I actually have a bill keeper, and we give all of the invoices over to her. And then she has the ability to look at it, understand exactly right away why it was returned.
So lists, basically. Like if it's on this list and we can't account for it, keep fighting for it.
Yep.
Got it. What up, Unstoppables? I have a very special offer for you that could potentially change your life. So listen up. Restaurant Systems Pro wants to make 2025 your best year ever. And here's what they're going to do to help. When you sign up for Restaurant Systems Pro through February of 2025, they will do your books, your 2024 books for you at zero charge. Nothing to you, no cost to you to do your books. Plus, you're going to get all of the Restaurant Systems Pro profitability systems. So this is such a no-brainer deal. If you've heard of Restaurant Systems Pro in the past, listening to the podcast, and you've been interested, now is the time to sign up. Head to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP or click the link below and make 2025 your best year ever. What else do you do in terms of cash flow management or just managing cash?
I think actually a really important thing to know and understand is something that my husband does, which I don't think a lot of people understand, which is everything is negotiable. There's certain things that you can't negotiate, like your taxes. But when it comes to food costs, you can negotiate those. And obviously with the bigger quantities that you buy, you can talk to your vendors and say, can you do a better price? Is that the best you can do? Where I feel like a lot of people don't realize that you can actually do that. And they just say, oh, well, that's what it costs. I guess that's what it cost.
Yeah, there's a book that's on my radar called Never Split the Difference. Have you heard of it? Chris Voss. It's a book on how to negotiate. And it's been like, you just reminded me, I'm actually going to open this and put it on my wish list right now. But it's so important. And like, I also think that like in negotiation, it's not necessarily about winning. It's about creating the win-win.
Well, yeah, because they're going to be, as a result of giving you that lower price point, they're going to be getting all of your business in that section.
Right. But like being creative thinking about like, yeah, like how can we find that? Like, it's not about me winning in this moment, but how can we choose to both win over time? And using incentivizing the other person to meet you where you need to be right now by offering something else of value. So anything else you do in terms of cash management?
I mean, we do inventory.
How often?
Monthly.
Do you think there's a world where you should do it more than that?
I think my staff would all quit.
Right.
If I tried to ask them to do it more than monthly.
I hear you. It's a challenge for sure. I mean, I've heard as much as, like once a week or maybe twice a week. Some people do it.
I know. I think it also has a direct relation as to how much you actually have in house.
Right.
We have so many different products and we change our menu a lot. So the volume of different things that we have, I mean, the list for food alone is like 900 different items.
Yeah. I think it is case by case, but I think even doing it monthly, like religiously, is better than most people, like 90%. But we're probably like 95% of most people in the industry.
It actually surprised me how many people don't really do inventory.
It's one of those things that like you're just like you don't have time for. Well, you need to like literally make it a part of the checklist. Like if it's a monthly checklist, if it happens like this is the day of the month we're doing this. And the biggest pushback is I can't get my staff to do it or they don't do it right. Well, then train them and then make it non-negotiable. And it just becomes one of those things that it becomes habitual. Like it sucks, but like it sucks together because we're all doing it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, it's not fun. It's just counting, but no, you need to do it. You need to do it religiously. And whenever you're implementing something new, and if it's not something you've done before, yeah, sure, there's always going to be pushback. So for example, we just moved our mop sink down from the bar to the basement for many, many different reasons. And, does everybody want to walk up and down one more flight of stairs? No. But it benefits the restaurants in lots of other ways. But within a month, within 2 months, within a year, it's just going to be commonplace.
Right.
And
new neural pathways will be formed.
Yeah, exactly. And then, 2 years later, you're going to have a lot new staff who never knew any different.
Right.
And then it just is what it is.
Right.
And it is challenging to get over that first hump. But I think one of the things to keep in mind is making sure that your management is being positive about the changes, and is keeping it positive about the changes, because obviously they affect how the rest of the staff is going to perceive it.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to bring attention to, real quick before we move from this subject, their cash flow management allocation process. Mike Michalowicz, author of Profit First, shares an amazing, and there's actually another book out there called Profit First for Restaurants by Casey Anton, who's a Profit First professional. I encourage everybody to use Profit First. And the idea behind Profit First, just like you allocate tax, you first, while you're taking that money off the top, you get your income, you put whatever it is, 20% away for tax, right? And then you take 10% next and you put it away for profit. That's not your money. That is future your money.
I don't know how many restaurants are making 10% profit.
Well, the thing is, if you start from day one of how to do this, right? Like, so if you do 10% off the top, the thing is you make it mandatory to make profit. The whole purpose of having a business is to draw profit from it. So you make it a non-negotiable. And then the other checking accounts after that are, for restaurants, they say your tax, and then your meals tax is a separate account. So you have two
sales
accounts.
Tax.
Yeah, sales tax. You have two accounts for tax. Then you have profit. Then you have owner's pay. So you're paying yourself an income on top of that, which would basically come from the it's kind of a part of like OpEx, right?
Yep.
And then your operational expenses are cost of goods and labor and electricity and utilities.
So we don't do direct draws just for owner's pay. We actually operate as an S Corp, even though we're technically an LLC. So everybody's on payroll.
Yeah. So like you would basically, so that would just go into your payroll, right? So you're allocating, so that would be operational expense, right? So depending on what business entity you are, you basically just allocate cash. But the idea is you pay taxes first, profit second, owner's pay after that, then whatever's left over is what you use to run your business with. And that determines your growth. So if you do this from day one, then you have to, like, that's what I have to work with. I need to start small, like, and let cash flow determine your growth. It's like almost like reverse, like it's like opposite of what you would do instinctually. Usually it's like you pay over your bills and I take what's left over. But it's called Profit First for restaurants. Casey Anton. Casey Anton is working with me. She's going to be making herself available. We're still trying to figure out whether it's going to be monthly or quarterly or annually, depending on the demand. But like, this is one of those things, like, and that's Restaurant Stoppable Network, where I'm literally like shepherding people to who I would go to tomorrow if I wanted to like implement these things.
I do want to circle back though real
Please.
quick, because I think it is an important thing on how we do it, as far as actually having Chris be on payroll as opposed to doing. I was curious.
So the difference of an S corp or an LLC is what we're getting into.
So we are an LLC, but technically, if you're an LLC, anytime owners are not allowed to be put on payroll. And we were doing owner withdrawals at first, but it just seemed I didn't like it for a couple of reasons. No taxes obviously weren't being taken out on either end. Nothing was being put into Social Security. I know it probably is going to be completely defunct by the time we get there, but it was also money going to unemployment too. And I don't know why, but I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't feel great about it. I just didn't think it was a great idea. So I had spoke to our accountant and she had said, okay, well, we can file as an S corp instead. And then as a result of filing as an S corp, he can go directly on payroll. And it was after the first year that we changed to that format. Fast forward to the pandemic, he was actually able to go on unemployment, which most restaurant owners were not, which was huge for us at that time. And I mean, I think another thing that was also huge for us was the fact that we had gone through all of the hoops of having the SBA be a part of everything to make everything. I mean, none of the banks would have worked with us if the SBA wasn't willing to work with us either way. But it does take more time and more hoops and just a lot more to work with the SBA. But then when, again, during the pandemic, the CARES Act, part of it was that the SBA actually paid our mortgage for, I think, in total...
Of your home or the business?
The businesses. Okay. Because we had the SBA loans.
So you got a lower percentage or or nothing?
They straight up paid it.
Oh, wow. But you don't owe them anything?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
High five. Actually, I can literally...
So, I mean, and I had no idea that was obviously going to happen in the long run, but it worked out quite nice that 9 months was paid for of our mortgage.
That's awesome. So the benefits, you can treat yourself like an employee, so there's more security there. If you have to be unemployed, that's an option for whatever reason, if there's a disaster. What are the other, just like list the other clear benefits in your perspective?
I mean, honestly, those are the clear...
I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
It makes it a little bit easier for me because instead of having to actually actively go in and do it every single week, it's just on payroll.
Yeah. What are the disadvantages, if any?
I mean, you have to put taxes in on both the employer and the employee side. So you are putting in taxes every single time. But another advantage I would say to it is at this point, we actually have a 401k. And he can contribute to a 401k, whereas if he was not part of payroll, he wouldn't be able to do that.
So I think we got down this rabbit hole by saying you picked up a new hobby post-pandemic of getting grants.
In the pandemic.
In the pandemic. When we got some great like little side detour conversations out of that. But back along that main vein of post-pandemic, the past 5 years, and operationally, are you doing anything differently?
So we take reservations now at Central Provisions. Nope.
Why not?
We never took we tried taking reservations at the very beginning, but we found that it was very hard in the small plate format to necessarily predict how long someone was going to be staying, because sometimes they would come in and have 2 plates, sometimes they would come in and have the whole menu, and it was a huge swing.
Right.
And thankfully we were busy enough that we were able to say, forget about it. The other issue that we had at the time was that the reservation systems that were available to us didn't do a good job of actually explaining exactly where you might be sitting. And we have tables and we have the chef's counter. The chef's counter accounts for 14 of our seats in our dining room.
Oh, wow.
So it's a majority of it.
And it's a different experience.
And there was at one point these two ladies who came in and they had reservations, but if you're a two-top, you're probably not getting a table because we reserve the tables for larger parties because obviously it's a little awkward to have a four-top at a bar.
Right.
But so these two ladies came in and they came in right at opening and they had a reservation and we sat them at the chef's counter and they were not happy. They were very not happy. And we tried to be like, no, it's like fun to sit here. And like, we tried to talk them into it, but it's pretty hard to convince somebody when they see an empty dining room and us telling them, no, you can't sit at any of those tables because within the next 15 minutes, they're all going to be full.
Right.
But they're not here yet. So, you know.
Yeah. This is why I encourage everybody to work in a restaurant. So they just, it's just mind boggling sometimes how clueless patrons can be. Like when they're like, I see tables and it's like, yeah, but like I have so many seats and so much time in a day and I need to utilize my assets to get the highest ROI and you should respect that. Like this is a business and I can't turn people away. The convenience of one guest shouldn't outweigh the conveniences of another guest.
No. And they ended up leaving.
Yeah.
And writing a scathing review. And actually something that I learned from that was Roxanne Dragon. She had come in that same night and I had explained the situation or whatever, a week later or something, the review is up at that point. And I had explained the situation that this scathing review was up there about how, you know, they got sat at the chef's counter. Oh God, what did they say? One of our chefs was plossing out ketchup into little cups and they said, oh, it was like being at Chuck E. Cheese and watching the smelly cook fill up ketchup containers.
Well, that's also just incredibly rude.
Yes. And at first I was like so upset that it was up there. And Roxanne was like, oh my God, you're so lucky that's up there. I'm like, what do you mean? And she completely changed my view on it because she said, oh yeah, anybody who has the same mentality and reads that will read it and say, oh, I don't want to go there. And you don't want them here anyway.
Right.
And I was like, huh. She goes, but anybody else? I mean, if you read that review from somewhere, what would you think when you read it? I
bet 100% it was an anonymous review. Like how many people would put their name and call degrade somebody?
It wasn't anonymous.
It wasn't?
They didn't care.
I'm going to look this person up. Look out, I'm coming for you.
But you know, it's just more of, you know, the people who read it and think that's ridiculous, those are the people I actually want to have come to our restaurant. Yeah. And people can read between the lines and they can understand and know the difference. Yeah.
Well, but I think what you did and what I think we're getting to is you use this experience to make it to evolve and to use reservations to clarify.
At that point, we stopped. We completely stopped reservations because I was like, this is too hard.
But you're back on reservations now.
Because we started doing them during the pandemic because we had to.
Why did you have to?
Because people wanted to know exactly when they were going to be there. People needed to know that there weren't going to be too many people in this. Nobody was going to show up unless they didn't have a reservation.
Got it.
And then we came to realize how much the locals really appreciated the opportunity to have a reservation and to be able to get it a lot easier. So that's why we kept them.
The reservations platforms are evolving too, I think, in favor of the restaurants now, where there's things you can do to protect yourself from the guests, like charging like a $30 if do you not believe in those things?
Oh no, we do. We try to be fair about it. If at CP you have a two hours before your reservation.
That's Central Provisions.
Yeah, thank you. 2 hours before. That's it. You just have to remember to cancel it 2 hours before.
That will give you time.
Yeah. At Tipo, it's 24 hours, but it's a neighborhood spot. We don't have as many people walking in
Right.
and all of that. But that to be said, if you call and you tell us like we have COVID, we can't come in, or my grandmother had a heart attack, all of that, we're not heartless individuals.
Right.
We're not going to charge you if there's some sort of catastrophe.
Yeah. I wonder how many people abuse that though.
You know what? I just like to think people are honest. But if you know, and we try to say other things too. And if somebody is like, oh, we can't come in, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, well, if you want to get some to-go food, we won't charge you. You know, if there's something else that we can do, we won't charge you. And at Central Provisions, if we actually end up filling the seats on our own, we won't charge you.
Yeah.
So we try to be kind about it.
That's cool. That's more than what most people. I mean, that's that's hospitality. That's being generous. That's those are the little things you can do to leave an impression that you don't necessarily have to do, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like we're just trying to not screw ourselves.
Right. So when you brought back reservations, did you do anything differently? Because I think now there's also like you can like reserve like. You can set different categories. So you can reserve the bar.
Yep.
You can reserve the dining room. So like if somebody comes in and they want 2 seats, the dining room's full, not an option, but we have 2 seats at the bar.
So we leave the bar as first come, first serve.
Okay. But you could do that. Like that's one of the cool things about, I think it's like there's a lot of malleability with the platforms today. So if that was something you did want to do, it's an option.
So we use Resi, and honestly, I can't speak more highly than Resi has been really, really great.
Why do you love Resi?
Because of that customability. Is that a word?
Customizability, custom. I don't know.
Moving on. We
Don't
all
ask
know what
me.
I was saying.
People tell me I'm well spoken. I'm like, have you heard me try to spit things out sometimes?
I like to make up words on the regular. But because you can convey so much information to the guests, and we even have a thing on there that now says that, you know, parties of, I think we try our best for parties of 3 or more to sit you at a table, but we cannot guarantee anything. That being said, we do have it programmed that they really don't go to the chef's counter. But every once in a while, if it makes a lot more sense for us to put a 3-top on the corner, then we put the 3-top on the corner.
I love a corner spot at a bar. I'll take that over a table any day.
And I mean, a 3-top on the corner is not bad.
No.
But, you know, when you're an 8-top walking in and all we have is the counter, if you'd like it, you can have it.
Yeah. Customizability is a word.
Yeah.
Just fact checked.
Okay, thank you.
So you said you love Resi. What are the other reasons why? Like,
it just makes it easy. I like that. I like how you can leave reviews, and that we're the only ones that actually see it.
Yeah. Are you aware that Resi purchased Talk?
No.
So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if those features are fully integrated into their platform yet or how that works. But would you ever consider using the chef's table as more of like an experiential base, like, or separate, like a la carte something, or is that just not Central Provisions?
I don't even know what that is.
So there's like the prefix, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, you basically, here's the menu, it's fixed. Like, you know in advance, we're going to charge you $120.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, we're going to do a wine pairing with it. Versus a la carte, I think I got it backwards, which is like, you know,
can
like
pick
you can pick whatever you want. Right?
Yeah.
So like, you can choose during the same time to have an experience-based meal that is prefixed, where like you're charging like an event in advance. And say that prefix experience is selling out months in advance. Mm-hmm. Well, now you can choose to change the value of that experience because there's a high demand, supply and demand, or that we always sell out on Friday and Saturday. Well, that experience on a Friday or Saturday is $160, not $120, because there's more people that want it during that time. So you can put it on a sliding scale depending on like demand or seasonal demand. So
I know this is possibly going off topic, but I think it has a similar vein. So we actually, one thing that we did do, and it was a result of one of my past general managers, she was like, why don't we do events here? Why don't we do more small events, large parties, anything like that? And I was like, well, because we're split up on 2 floors, it's kind of awkward. It's not really the place. People don't really want to do it. This is just for Central Provisions. Tipo is a lot easier to have events. And we do have a fair amount of events there. And she was like, yeah, but you can still do it. And so we set up this whole large party events because we honestly didn't, with a dining room as small as I was saying, it's hard to have a big table come. And a lot of times when you have that bigger table come, then they don't necessarily eat as much. And how much you make per person is not the same because everybody likes to try to be considerate to the other people, and they won't take that last bite, and they won't necessarily say, hey, I'm still hungry, because they're trying to go with the group and go with the flow. So we would sometimes have these tables of 8 people that would spend just as much as a 4-top would. And it's not in our benefit. And also, like, all of a sudden, you know, we have a 10-top coming in and half of them are kids. I mean, I'm not against having kids at my restaurant. We opened Tipo in order to be more.
They're not drinking alcohol, though.
No, they're not drinking alcohol, and they're not eating very much. And I am more than happy to have kids come in. Don't get me wrong. And I mean, in fact, like, we serve a grilled cheese and a pasta and all of this stuff that we can offer to kids because our menu is challenging. But we did make the decision that for any parties, you can only reserve up to a 6-top. Got it. Anything that's more than that, you actually have to do a private event. And if it's for dinner, it's a $135 tasting menu per person. And it's a family style tasting menu, and you get 8 different courses.
Right. And that's the cool thing about these platforms today is you can kind of work those why can I say this word right now?
We actually don't do it through Resi at all.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, you have to contact our on our website. We have like a form that you can fill out, and then we talk back and forth. But we also have now done several different weddings and buyouts of just the bar and all of this other stuff, and it's been really great. And it can be very profitable if you do it correctly. But you want to try to make sure you're being fair to your guest, but you also need to make sure you're being fair to yourself. And the way that we calculate how much we're actually going to charge for an event is based off of how much did we do last year on a similar day. And, you know, if we did $14,000 during that service, I'm sorry, your party of 36 people, it's going to be $14,000.
Yeah. Any other technology you're leveraging? You said you went back to Resi. You were using Breadcrumb, I think, the last time we spoke. You still with Breadcrumb?
We just call it Lightspeed now.
Lightspeed? Okay. How have you been? Has it been a good experience with Lightspeed?
You know, it's been interesting going through 3 different transitions because I went from Breadcrumb to Upserve to Lightspeed. I have chosen to stick it out with them, partially because they have all of our data, and anytime I want to go and look something up, it's right there and so easy for me to access. And also just because the interface is so easy to work with, and it's super easy to train people on. It's a very easy program to work with, and I know it well enough and know how to manipulate it to have it work the best for us.
This is something I'm kind of like wrestling with. By far, the number one most recommended POS on the show is Toast. I think that people get way too worked up with getting the best POS. Like, I think a POS is important. Don't get me wrong. But I think that there are probably 10 POS companies, Lightspeed's on that list, that POS isn't going to make or break your business.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I disagree. I think there's a lot of information you can get out of your POS.
But Lightspeed's on that list, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, it doesn't have to be Toast is what I'm trying to say.
No, it doesn't have to be Toast, but we started with a company that doesn't even exist anymore, Amber, and we had so many problems with it. Tables would disappear.
I'm saying that the POS is important,
yes.
But I'm saying it doesn't have to be the number one most recommended POS.
No, I mean, I think different people decide to choose different ones for different reasons. The reason that I chose to stay, one of the reasons I choose to stay with it is because how quickly and easily it is to 86 something, and anybody can 86 something, because we we have a lot of specials and we have a rotating menu. And so a lot, like there will be counts on a lot of things on a regular basis. And I don't want to disappoint the customer in thinking that they actually had it when they do not have it.
Got it.
So being able to quickly 86 something is
there a count next to it, like in real time? So like if there's 2 left, like, as a server, like you can look and say, there's only 2 of these left.
And when we get on a count, we tell everyone to tell your friends. We tell one person and you have to tell everybody. But at the same time, they might think they have 3 orders left, but then they go to pull it and they're like, oh no, this last one's too small, or, oh shoot, what happened to that one extra order? Or they burned something. There's things that can happen even if you have a count.
No, Lightspeed's using tablets.
Yes.
So you could, as you're like, the server could be like at the table in real time. Somebody orders something that there's a 3 count of, but when they look down, it actually just sold out. Like the table down there just got the last 2.
We don't have it tableside. We did at the very beginning have it tableside. Actually, with Amber, we had everybody had iPods. We came to realize that everybody just thought iPods.
Oh, really?
Yeah, iPods. We came to realize that everybody thought that the server was just playing on their phone.
Oh, really?
And not paying attention to them.
Do you think that's going to go away with time as the consumer gets smarter with like...
Sure, potentially. But I think it also has to, all of our servers did things like very purposely would like put it down on the table so they could see and then like as they were ordering it, they would be punching it in, or they would like make a little joke being like, I'm not just texting my best friend, I'm getting your order in.
Got it.
But I don't know. I don't like the tableside ordering. I think that's not the level of service we're trying to give.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between using the like tablet or whatever it is, your phone, versus writing on a piece of paper?
Yeah. I think you're potentially paying a lot more attention if you're writing on a piece of paper, because instead of trying to press all the different buttons to get into the category in order to do what you need to do.
Yeah. It's a little more involved.
Yeah. And you can pay more attention to the guests in front of you. And that's even if you take down the order on a piece of paper. I have a lot of my servers don't take down anything because they just have an amazing memory. Would I do that if I was tableside? Absolutely not. I have a memory like a sieve. I would write down everything.
Right. No, I want to make sure. I think we agree. Like what I was trying to say before, like I think there's probably a list of 10 POSs I could give you, right? And I think having a list of 10 options is pretty good. There's a good amount of diversity in that list where like this company might have more of what we're looking for, right? Like Toast is on that list. Spot On is on that list. Lightspeed's on that list. Square is on that list. Maybe I could keep going until I got to 10. I just think that people tend to go with what everyone else is doing, and they'll say well, what's the most recommended? And oh, Toast. Well, let's just go with that one. But I worry sometimes if every restaurant across the country goes with the same company.
There'll be no more companies. They'll just be in a monopoly.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm alluding to. I think we kind of got there with Oracle and Micros 20 years ago, where it was like there were 2 big companies, and they can set the rates. They can control all these things. And now when the POS company controls the credit card processing rates, and 60% of all restaurants use that credit card processor in that POS, we're setting I think it's really important that we just are more mindful about who we're giving power to. And I'm not saying Toast is an evil company. I want to make that clear.
No, not at all.
We're creating, we could be potentially creating a situation where we're giving one company a lot of power. So
I think a good example of this is, we do use Lightspeed at Central Provisions and Tipo, but at Finestkind, we don't. We use Square.
Yeah. Why is that?
It's counter service.
Yeah.
It's counter service. We don't need to be firing things. It's a lot different of a format, and it's a lot cheaper of a platform.
Why is that? Well, yeah, upfront hardware costs, right?
Well, no, not just. Well, actually, they gave us all of the hardware.
Right.
On top of the monthly subscription fee being significantly less.
Right.
Which is important.
So my understanding is that they make up for that because they probably have higher than average credit card processing fees. But then the kickback to that is most people who use Square are cafes, and their per ticket purchases are $4, $5, maybe $12 if you're getting a sandwich too. So it balances out.
It does, but I mean, they can't, there's only so much that they can actually charge. And that's another thing that you actually should be keeping an eye on, is how much your credit card fees are. And there are other ways of lowering that, like making sure you're, what is it, PCI compliant. That's like $20 a month if you're not doing that.
Right. The cool thing about Square or Toast or Lightspeed is that they're cloud-based. So every month they automatically, there's a new rendition, and it that includes the PCI compliance. Did I cut you short?
No, but I mean, something I honestly didn't realize, and it was some Cindy over at Brown Trading actually let me know. She's like, do you realize that you can negotiate this? And I didn't. And I went back and I realized that they didn't tell you that you had to fill out this form to be PCI compliant because it wasn't in their best interest. Because if you just never fill it out, then that's $20 more that they're getting every single month. So now I have it all set up that it's filled out, so I don't get charged that $20.
I'm thinking about hosting a workshop. Sorry, that just goes over all the shady things POS companies do. There's a lot of shady stuff happening out there right now that I was never aware of either. But there are people who've made this their life's work to like expose some of this stuff. One company is Merchant Advocates. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, so they are a company that will go through and basically just like argue on your behalf to get you the best possible rate. We're gonna be getting them on the show. Fred Langley from Restaurant Systems Pro is also somebody who just knows that world so well, because they are in the process of trying to implement a POS serve, which is actually live now. They now own their own POS, but like they were restaurant owners before they started Restaurant Systems Pro. So they are like staunch about like doing the best thing for their clients. And they're like gung ho on getting the best possible like credit card processing rates for their platform. So in that journey, he just learned so much about how it all works, you know, with like the interchange and like all that stuff, and it gets kind of crazy. Anything we haven't discussed up to this point? I feel like we've been jumping around a lot. I mean,
I think one thing that I could talk about is that I know I touched on the fact that we have a 401k now, but the whole concept of, as what I had talked about before, that employees first. And, you know, the first year we were open, we couldn't afford to offer health insurance, but then, you know, the second year we were. And then that second year we weren't able to contribute, but then the next year we were. So, I mean, I want to take care of my employees, but I can't do it at the expense of the business, because if the business isn't possible, then their job isn't possible.
Absolutely.
But just, you know, we have slowly but surely added more and more benefits on along the way, and also trying to listen to my employees. At one point I said, if there was one thing that we could have that we don't currently have, what would it be? And everybody said dental and vision. I said, okay, I can offer dental and vision. That's not hard. So we started offering dental and vision. And then we did start a 401k, and then that was the next step. We started a 401k, and when we put the 401k into place, we did it actually at the same time that we started a mental wellness program as well, which is through a local company called WellSpace at Work. And every single one of my employees is entitled to 5 therapy sessions a year on us.
What? Say that name of that again. WellSpace
at Work.
So 401k, WellSpace.
Well, so.
And then you also said you're doing health insurance.
Insurance, dental, and vision. We don't contribute to dental and vision, but just having it available.
Right.
But the WellSpace at Work, during the pandemic and everything, nobody was okay. Everybody was having problems, and it was hard. And in 2021, after I personally dropped 2 different employees off at a rehab facility, I also brought another employee to the emergency room because of how suicidal they were feeling. I also had a huge intervention at another house and then got somebody into a bed again because they were feeling suicidal and all of this stuff. I am not trained to deal with this stuff.
Right.
And I do not expect my managers to be trained to be able to handle this kind of stuff. And I found out about this program, and being able to, in the past, when I would look at somebody and I would be like, I think you really need to talk to somebody. I think you really need help. It just was it just goes into the void because they're like, well, where am I going to find help and where, blah, 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 blah. But through the Well Space at Work, they guarantee that you will have an appointment within a week.
Is it Well Space Maine?
Yes, Well Space Maine, but then they have a section of it that is Well Space at Work.
Okay. What up, Unstoppables? I have a very special offer for you that could potentially change your life. So listen up. Restaurant Systems Pro wants to make 2025 your best year ever. And here's what they're going to do to help. When you sign up for Restaurant Systems Pro through February of 2025, they will do your books, your 2024 books for you at zero charge. Nothing to you, no cost to you to do your books. Plus, you're going to get all of the Restaurant Systems Pro profitability systems. So this is such a no-brainer deal. If you've heard of Restaurant Systems Pro in the past, listening to the podcast, and you've been interested, now is the time to sign up. Head to restaurantunstoppable.com/RSP or click the link below and make 2025 your best year ever. So what is the cost for this?
There is an initial startup cost, which at the time was about $2,300. And then besides that, it is just the cost of the actual, I obviously I don't see who goes.
Right.
A lot of times I end up finding out because they come up and say thank you. But when I was setting up the program in the first place, we had decided that 5 sessions was enough time to actually get something accomplished. And also enough time for people to realize the value of therapy. I think we saw a very big cultural shift in our restaurant in general once this started being available because, a lot of our staff would use it. And that's 5 sessions every year.
Wow.
And when your managers are using it and then they start actually just going into therapy on a regular basis as a result of it because they see the value of their mental health because it's something that's definitely stigmatized. And, do you really want to put your money there? Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
But it made a culture that within our restaurant that it's okay to go to therapy and you're the coolest if you go.
No, there's definitely a shift. I think there's just a general shift in awareness of mental health and, we're learning so much about the brain. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things they say Moore's law, right? Where technology is exponential. But I think that kind of applies to our own knowledge, science, our own knowledge of our brain is exponentially growing in terms of what we're learning about the human. And the more you know about anything, the more you know about how a car works, if you're driving down the highway and you hear a certain noise and you know what that noise is, you can identify it and you can do something about it. Mm-hmm. Your brain's the same way. If you are in a situation and you feel yourself getting anxious or angry, that that's just an emotion and that you can override that emotion. Mm-hmm. And you can choose to do some breathing exercises, or you can understand that you literally have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I manage depression and I've managed depression my whole life. And so I understand how hard it can be. And I'm very sympathetic to all these things. And I have lots of tools at this point from going to lots of therapy in my toolbox to recognize situations and therefore nip them in the bud. Mm-hmm. And just ways to calm myself down. I also am prone to anxiety attacks. And I think actually a very good example of us always putting our employees first would be during New Year's this year. So New Year's, we do 2 seatings with a tasting menu, and it's completely different than what we normally do. And, everybody gets served the same plate at the same time, and it's very much almost a lot more like catering than a traditional service. And one of our employees who had never worked this style service before was working it. I had messed up something on Resy. It's not Resy's fault, it's my fault. But it had capped our reservation sooner than it was supposed to be. So therefore that first turn didn't end up being as full as it normally is. And either way, so the first turn ended up being a lot easier than it normally is. Because normally we have the whole restaurant full, but this time we only had the full dining room. And so this one employee who has been having some personal issues and struggling some outside of work, she comes to work to kind of just get into her rhythm and do what she needs to do. And she knows what to do, and she's very good at her job. But this is a completely different job than what she normally does. And then the first turn was pretty easy. The second turn is usually always easier. And I thought it was easier, but it was a lot harder for her because we had a full everything. And as we were getting on to, I believe it was the second course, my general manager was pouring wine, and she came down and said, I have to go. Blah, blah, blah is having a hard time. I need to go pull her aside. And I said, okay, go do what you need to do. And I just picked up where she was and kept going. And she pulled her outside, and she talked to her for a minute because she was having an anxiety attack because she felt like she was doing a bad job at work. And this is her haven. This is where she knows what she's doing.
Right.
So she had a conversation with her, and then she was back down in like the next 10 minutes. And I was like, how's she doing? Is she doing better? She's like, yes, I think so. So my employee, I saw her coming down the stairs, and I said, hey, come into the walk-in. And I brought her into the walk-in, and I did some breathing exercises with her. And then I did some of the anxiety visualizations that I do for myself. And I took 5 minutes with her in the walk-in. And then when we stopped, I said, okay, are you feeling better? Are you doing better? And she said, yes. And this is exactly why I love working here.
Yeah.
Because you cared more about how I was feeling than if the food is going out on time.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really like one of the biggest lessons behind every great restaurant's a great person. And I try to tell people, like, if you want a great restaurant, the journey doesn't start on working on your restaurant. It starts on working on you. And if you work on you, and you develop these values that you wrote down on a piece of paper, and you say, these are our values, but you actually embody them and you live them every day, and you help the people that come work with you work on these values. And maybe one of those values is we are emotionally aware, or like whatever that wording is for you, or like we work on ourselves, like, and you build systems to literally like safe space. What's it called? Well space at work is a system that you implement to make that value possible. And when you lift yourself up, you lift up those around you, and that's how you attract onto yourself the people that stay with you for years.
And I mean, I will also be honest that another one of my mantras that I like to live by is, you're not the mistakes that you make, you're how you choose to fix them. Mm-hmm. And I had definitely made mistakes in the past. Since 2018 by any chance? Well, actually, it was even before then.
Okay.
I can remember at one point, one of my servers was having a hard time, and I went up to them, and instead of like pulling them aside and getting them to calm down, I went up to them and I was like, you look like you're about to have a heart attack. Calm down. It's only food. Which, that's not helpful. Yeah. That's not, telling someone who's in the middle of having a hard time, calm down. Like, okay, if I could just do that, then I would. But I did end up getting the feedback afterwards that wasn't helpful.
Right.
And that not directly from that person, they went and complained to one of my managers. Oh, and I heard it, and you know what? But I heard it.
That's something I was going to say. That's something you hear all the time. I've heard that. Like, like it's only food. I think the idea is like we get stressed out in this world of restaurants, but maybe not in the moment. Say it's only food, but just remind people daily, like, we're just serving food, like at the end of the day, the world's not crashing, if we have a bad table. Like, we don't want that to happen. But like, I think it's like a mindset thing. Like, if you find yourself getting to that edge of an anxiety attack, like, we're just serving food. Like, I hear what you're saying in the moment. It wasn't right, but like, you hear that all the time.
I was being dismissive
of
her feelings, to be frank, and it
Right.
wasn't the right thing to be doing.
I hear you.
And instead of acknowledging their feelings and being understanding of their feelings and helping them to manage them and control them, and maybe still saying that, but it's the tone and the reason why you're saying it.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake.
Yeah. So you opened your third restaurant. That was 2022, 2023?
Last September.
Last September.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So relatively, what is that? 4 months ago? Not even 3 months ago?
Several months ago. 3. Yeah. 3 plus.
So I guess one thing I'm curious about, like, where are you now and like, what's the vision? Like, what are you working towards?
So we are actually minority owners in Finestkind.
Okay.
Our general manager from Tipo and our kitchen manager from Central Provisions, we actually were in the process of trying to make them partners within our 2 businesses. And then we'd had multiple meetings and worked out the contract and all of this. And I thought we were going into a meeting where we were going to be signing things and it was all going to be said and done. Turns out I was wrong. In the meeting, they came to us and said, you know, we've talked about it a lot and we realized we don't want to partner with you. We want to be you. And in that same breath, they were like, and we're under contract in a building in Saca. And we said, okay. And then at that point I completely shift gears and I was like, okay, who are you talking to? What are you doing? Because I want to help these people. I've been working with them for the last 6-7 years and I love these people. They're 2 of my most favorite people in the world, obviously, or else we wouldn't be trying to partner with them.
Right.
So, and then at the end of the conversation, I said, which they didn't, they were working with the bank and the SBA and all of that kind of stuff, just like we had. And they were actually working with my banker, which I would want them to be clear.
Right.
And I want to give them all of my resources and everything. And I want to help them as much as possible. And at the end of the conversation, I said, fine, you don't want to be our business partners, but do you want business partners? So they did. And in the end, we came to an agreement.
That model, you must know the name Jay McSherry, Jumpin' Jays, Portsmouth.
Yeah.
I think he has been a huge inspiration to me and other operators like him. I think Dane Meyer is another example where I think the core, if I can like teach people, if I'm writing a book tomorrow called The Unstoppable Path, at the top of that path, when you get to the point where you're no longer working in your restaurants, but you're a person who's an investor or a partner with other people, we are in the game of developing people and future business partners. And then when we have the money to invest in properties, it becomes this game where like we're in the business of real estate. We understand the systems of restaurants. We understand people. We understand that we can be the opportunity for other people. And in that agreement, our partners can buy us out. But what we are in the business of doing is building and creating opportunity for others. And when you get to that point, I think the sky is the limit for the potential earning. And that's when the restaurant industry can be really lucrative, when you realize that, just like we started our first conversation, employee first. And then that comes to blooms into partner first. And we're really in the business of relationships and lifting people up around us. So I'm happy to hear that that's where you guys are, and like and realizing you go further together.
It's a fun, very different situation to be in. And I trust both of them implicitly. But it's just kind of funny for Chris and I, because we've been used to being, the majority owner for everything, and anything that we say goes.
Right.
And
but you can't do it all.
No, we can't do it all. Of course not. But at the same time, when it came to the new venture, we would make recommendations because we weren't the majority owners and this was their ball game. And so we would give them a recommendation, and whether they chose to file it or not was up to them.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of times where like we had made a recommendation and they didn't follow it, and I understood their logic for not following it. And sometimes it worked out in the past and sometimes it didn't.
Right.
But it was definitely a change of mentality for us.
Yeah. Do you want to open more restaurants?
I would be happy to open more restaurants in partnership with somebody.
Why do you think partnerships are the way?
Because I don't want to be the end all be all for everything. And I think sharing the burden and sharing the responsibility makes it a lot easier.
What would you say to combat the person that would be sitting at this table that would argue never get into a partnership?
You have to play better in the sandbox.
Yeah, I think 9 times out of 10, it's maybe because you're not a great partner. Or you don't, maybe you are a good partner, but you don't know how to set up a partnership agreement.
And you have to make sure that you're in business with somebody. I mean, I've already worked with these people for several years, and I have spent Christmas Eve with them many years.
Yeah.
These are 2 of our very good friends, which I think, is something that other people would caution you to, is to go into business with your friends. I mean, people also caution you to go into business with your spouse. So I don't listen to anybody, apparently. Right. But making sure you have the same work ethic, making sure you have the same morals, just the same thought process when it comes to everything is super important.
I mean, think about it. Like, you spent 6 years establishing a culture and teaching a culture, and these people are going to go to whatever direction they want to go in, and a part of you is going to be with them. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the people that you want to invest in, because you know that they have developed, their habits. Mm-hmm. I kind of agree with you where I push back on that whole, avoid partnerships. Don't go into business with friends. Don't go into business with family. Like, choose better friends. You can't choose your family, but
well, and also in going into business with our family, because we are in business with our family, we made it crystal clear that they are completely silent partners. They don't have anything to do with the restaurant industry at all. That in the
first episode.
Yeah, and it's just important that you lay that ground and are very clear about what the expectations are. And so therefore, when suggestions were being made, such as, why are you having standing rails? Nobody will stand there. I'm like, you might not stand there, but somebody will. Right.
And I think that's a big part of partnerships is communication. It's one of the reasons why we made it a core value here at Restaurant Unstoppable. Because, and those core values are, we have integrity, we are students, we are educators, we are collaborators, mm-hmm. we are communicators, we are fiscally responsible, and we have fun. I feel like those are the values, because I think if you look at your story, right, you have integrity, you do what you say you're going to do, you work hard. You are always learning. When you get to the point where you've learned a lot, you turn around and you lift up people behind you. When those people are shoulder to shoulder with you, you collaborate with them. You choose to go further together with them. Mm-hmm. And you have to communicate always, because that's what good partnerships hinge on.
And honestly, Tom is incredible in what he does. But my counterpart is more Victoria, because she does the front of the house. She also does baking as well. She's very talented. Both of them are extremely talented. But I really didn't want to lose Victoria, and I haven't, because she's a very good person for me to bounce off of. And there's just certain people that you can bounce off of so well. Yeah. And you can have conversations, and you can have candid conversations with about the hard things and about what's happening. And we also both work with our spouses, so we can have hard conversations about stuff like that. And we can both we help ground each other in a lot of ways. Yeah. Which it's really great to have that. And on that note, I also have a very lovely group of ladies. Yes. That I go out to lunch with. We try to do it every month. If we actually did it every month, it would be amazing, but we don't. Yeah. Ilma Lopez, Michelle Corey, and Teresa Chan are my power lunch ladies. Yeah. And they are all restaurant owners. Ilma, as you know, owns Cheval, an Ugly Duckling, with her husband, Damien. Michelle Corey.
We're actually in Cheval recording this.
We are. Michelle Corey was the owner of 555 and Petit Jacqueline, which Petit Jacqueline was the first restaurant that I was working in while we were in the process of opening Central Provisions. And then Teresa Chan owns Empire Chinese Kitchen, but she also owns the event space upstairs that is a music venue.
Upstairs here?
No, upstairs in Empire.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, we're going to be talking to these ladies. Actually, this is the first time I've ever done that. It's going to be like a round table. I don't really have much of an expectation. But the core thing that I want to point out is that along this vein of choosing to go further together, that isn't just in the four walls of your business. It isn't us against the rest of the world and the rest of this community. There has been an absolute underlying theme and pattern in my work, traveling to all these communities, talking to all these leaders. It's those who choose to work together that go further together. And it's in your own business, but I like to call it business polyamory, where like you have multiple business partners and you're all like, what you're good at. Say you're an amazing cocktail, mixologist, but you also just are super talented at developing cocktail programs, and you're a partner in multiple different restaurant groups because you bring that skill set to multiple restaurants and you manage those cocktail programs. Or an executive chef who is incredibly talented and has the intellectual property and can develop menus, and they can teach other people how to execute it. You could do that for 5 restaurants under one restaurant group, or for multiple restaurant groups and you're the partner. Mm-hmm. But when it's only like the mindset of scarcity that gets in the way of or jealousy or ego, all the worst parts of human existence that don't make that work. But if you have a mindset of abundance and like giving and sharing and like what's best for all of us, like that just blows the roof off the possibilities and potential.
Yeah. I mean, 110%. And when I find something out that I realize nobody else knows, I call all my friends and I tell them.
Yeah.
And I make sure that they know and make sure that they understand it. I mean, same thing even with when it came to the grants and all of this other stuff. Teresa didn't even know about the RRF. And I was like, what are you doing? You need to apply. Like, you are like top on the list.
Yeah.
And we just all have different resources. And if we all come together and ensure that we're all taking care of each other as well, then it
keeps the tribe healthy.
It does. It does. And I mean, as far as, Ilma and Damien and Michelle and Steve, her husband, they were two couples that were working together too. And it's just always so easy to work with your spouse. So
I think I caught a hint of sarcasm.
What?
Maybe just a little bit.
No, I mean, honestly, I think me and my husband do a very good job. We met and we're working together in the first place, and that's just kind of what we know.
Yeah.
But it is nice to have, an outlet to talk to somebody else who's in the same position and have them be like, oh, my husband did this and blah, blah, blah. And it's just a release, which it's nice. It's nice to be able to have that.
Yeah. So I do like to kind of, but before I ask that question, like what is your anticipation of our conversation that's about to happen in 45 minutes?
I mean, just talking about how important community is.
Yeah.
And how you can benefit from community and how we have benefited from each other, from working together and working with each other.
Yeah. I definitely want to focus on that for sure. I think that's going to be a big part of our conversation. One thing I'm hoping to talk about, when you ever get together, do you ever talk about like the challenges in your community, what you're doing to overcome those challenges, and like what the future looks like, and how we can come together to maybe not react to a future, but form and create a future?
No.
Okay.
I think most of the time it's honestly just more about a lot of us don't make time for ourselves. And don't make time to see friends. And I think the fact that the 4 of us really try to prioritize doing this is good. And having those times with your friends to be able to talk and just be silly and talk about our kids. We all have kids, and Teresa is pregnant right now with her 4th, and it just to be able to talk about all of it and how it, and to be able to relate to somebody else, and also just to be able to reframe things in each other's minds and just help.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much looking forward to that, but I am curious, what do you think the future looks like for the restaurant industry? What future are you preparing for?
I think the one interesting thing that I figured out with the pandemic is that restaurants aren't going anywhere because nobody knows how to cook that well.
Right. Well, also, like, I think it's weird. We look at food as a commodity because it's literally like the most like primal form of food, like is a commodity. Like corn is a commodity, meat is a commodity. And it's weird that we look at those things as commodities because it's literally life. Mm-hmm. Like all those things that we put in our body.
You have to eat.
It's life. And those things are living. Mm-hmm. And we are all from the same source. Like we all evolved from the same single cell organism. Mm-hmm. You know, like there's something there that I think cuts deeper. It's all connected, you know? And if you look at like anthropology and our evolution, like going back to like 2 million years ago when we were monkeys to 200,000 years ago when we were like the I think they call it the cognitive revolution. Like our relationship, our evolution has slungshot off food our entire existence, from learning how to use fire to agriculture to like we learned the scientific process because of food. Like we are literally what we are today as a species because of food and our relationship with it. Mm-hmm. And to think that the future is going to be any different is just ignorant.
Yeah. I mean, well, and it's funny, somebody at one point had tried to get Chris, someone from the Port and Press Herald wanted him to do an article. I can't recall if he did it or not, but they essentially went on to AI and was like, write a recipe for Chef Chris Gould would put out and all of this. And then it came back with something that was essentially like a caprese salad. And we're like, no, AI will not be replacing us. AI can't replace us. And robots can't do what we do. They can't taste, they can't adjust, they can't, every squash tastes a little bit different. And, if this squash isn't quite as sweet as the last squash, well, then you have to add a little bit more sugar.
Right.
And these are things that only humans can understand.
Yeah. Like AI doesn't really compete. I think it's situational, like in the moment situational, like using context. They don't really quite get that yet. And the other part of that obviously is emotional intelligence, mm-hmm. which is very much human.
Yeah.
So I think AI is inevitable. It's going to be a part of our life.
Sure.
And I think we'll find ways to figure out how to leverage that to make us more efficient. Mm-hmm. But if you think that we're going to be replaced with AI,
no.
like if anything, I'm hopeful because I think a lot of the work that more of the white collar, like data driven stuff, those jobs are going to probably be replaced with AI, or even machinery work will probably be replaced, like robots with AI, situational stuff in a closed system. But I think that's going to free up a lot of human bandwidth to get back to what it is that we truly love to do, which is serve each other in an intimate setting, to reconnect with food. And mm-hmm. we're also learning that our food system's messed up, and like to do real food takes a human attention and labor. And I think that there's something to like reward in that I hope people come to this industry.
I don't think I've ever actually told you that we also own a farm, technically.
What the hell? Why didn't you tell me that?
I don't know. Because where food comes from in general is actually something that's very, very important to us. We don't advertise ourselves as an all organic restaurant or anything like that, but we do, because all of the farmers that we work with they might have organic practices, but they might not be actually classified under MAFCA as an organic farm. But we do try our best to always buy organic. And it came to, it's a little farm. It's right on our property. We own 2.5 acres.
What percentage of your food comes from your own property?
I don't know that number,
ballpark.
But I can tell you that last year, and I have to stop saying we because yes, it's all Chris. Yeah. I have the blackest thumb ever and was responsible for an African violet genocide as a child. I just loved the fuzzy violets and I always wanted them. But anyway, but last year he produced 4,500 tons of food out of our little garden.
That's crazy.
Through a lot of crop rotating and all sorts of stuff like that. But he does lettuces, he does flowers, he does herbs. Oh my goodness. He does peppers, he does carrots, he does radishes. We stay away from things like broccoli or cauliflower, which takes like a whole season to grow in one place. So we try to go for more of the high yield things that can be rotated. But rhubarb, oh my God, so many raspberries.
Now,
Yeah.
Do you like vertically integrate that with your business? So like you are paying, rent, or you were doing something else. I can't remember. Like, do you have a separate LLC or a separate business that you pay your farm?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually,
yeah.
So actually, I'm the sole owner of the LLC.
The farm?
Ironically enough, yes, I am. But that's also because I own all property, and because I actually own that property, it just makes the most sense if I'm it, or else he would have to be renting the property out from me. But one thing that is completely off topic, but something fun that's to know as a parent, because I am the sole owner. If you and your partner are the sole owner of a business, you can actually pay your child up to a certain percentage, and I don't know what it is this year. I want to say $14,000. Oh, wow. You can pay that up to $14,000. I don't quote me on the exact number, but you can pay them without putting employee tax in, and without them putting without employer or employee tax.
Yeah, and they don't have to be 16 either.
No, they sure don't. Actually, there's no age requirement.
I'm pretty sure my parents knew that law.
Child, and technically, you actually don't even have to also pay your child, but we do. We pay them. We pay them a fair wage, and they work for us.
Yeah, I started working my parents' restaurant as soon as I was able to get the trash bag into the dumpster. I'm pretty sure. Well,
because we have business partners, we couldn't do it. Yeah. We couldn't do the same thing with it, but we can with the farm. But they help us when it comes to, they help Chris, I should rephrase. When it comes to even making the starters in the first place, they help him plant everything. They help him water everything. They help weed. They help harvest.
That's so good.
And we have them, and we log all of their hours. I also spoke to one of our farmers, and we came up with what a reasonable, a farmhand can make anywhere from $20 to $25, but obviously they're younger, so we have it be 20 for the youngest, 21 for the one who's a little older.
They're not working 40 hours a week.
No. Yeah. They're working
after school, do your chores.
4 maybe the whole week. And I had conversations with them too, being like, yeah, you're going to be doing this work. No, you are not going to be getting the actual check. So what we actually did was we turned around and opened up a Roth IRA for them.
Wow. So
all of that money is going in there completely tax-free, but it's a Roth IRA. So therefore, when they go to take it out, they won't have to pay any taxes either.
I love that. I love this stuff. And I think this is the future. I think that, what you're doing, I think that more and more people, I think society is putting more and more, we're starting to realize that there's an epidemic of health, and that it all starts with where you get your food. Mm-hmm. And I think the only way you change human or consumer behavior is by helping them understand what's in it for me.
Yeah.
And when you start saying, do you want to be healthier? Do you not want cancer? Do you want to feel great every day? Then it starts with what you put into your body. And there's this awakening of food as medicine, lifestyle as medicine. And that lifestyle also includes relationships and choosing to get out of your 4 walls, your home, to go bump up against people and to communicate and to talk and to love and to put good things into your body. And where is this all going to happen?
So I think one thing that's interesting is that, like I said, we try our best to use all organic products. All of our flour is definitely organic that we use, and we make our own bread. Not all of it, but some of it we do make. And we had some regulars coming in being like, I'm gluten intolerant, but whenever I eat your bread, I don't have a problem.
Sourdough?
No, we don't have room or space to do a sourdough. It's just honestly not using
shit product.
Yeah. So something that I found out, which I thought was interesting, was that a lot of times after they harvest the wheat, they'll actually spray it right before they harvest it, because it makes it dry out faster. And then they can do the whole process faster. But then that means it's literally such a higher concentration of the pesticide that goes into the final product that you're getting. So a lot of Americans will eat things and be like, oh my God, I'm allergic to gluten. No, you're actually allergic to the pesticide.
Yeah. We're just learning so much. That goes back to the human body and what we're learning. There's just so much information coming out. And I think that there's going to be a revolution. I think it's going to hinge off of food and relationships, because those are the two things that we are social creatures, mm-hmm. and we are creatures that control our environment and master our environment to get food. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just so just disconnected from that right now.
I'm totally going to loop back to the beginning of the conversation again about price control. The first thing my husband does when he walks into the restaurant almost every single time is he goes and looks in the trash can.
Yeah.
And in the compost to be like, what are they throwing out?
Right.
What are they not utilizing? Because, you know, the scraps from the carrot peels can be used in the stock. And everything can be reused and reutilized. And nothing should really be thrown out.
Well, you bring up something that I wanted to talk about earlier. That what you just said triggered this for me, and I think that like you started talking about 401k and health insurance and well space at work and offering vision and dental and all that stuff. And a common theme that I had with Ilma, that I think I also had with Krista Cole, and I want to say, oh my goodness, Pearl. Why can't I think the Pearl?
Are you talking about Alex?
Yeah, Alex. Thank you very much.
Crown Jewel.
Yeah, Crown Jewel. Thank you.
The Pearl's a nightclub that's closed now, so I was like,
right. Sorry, I talk to so many people, and it's hard. I always remember the faces, but it's hard to keep everybody straight.
Fair enough.
But it's like a common issue here in Portland. It seems like, and I was hoping this would come up later when we get everybody together. It's getting harder and harder to do the right thing. I think a lot of people, a lot of business owners want to do the right thing. They want to purchase food from the local farm. They want to offer benefits and insurance and security to their staff. But when you spend a lot of money on cost of goods and you spend a lot of money on labor to offer security, it becomes harder and harder to stay in business. Mm-hmm. So I guess to your point, what is that? Like, how do we tackle that problem? If you have any thoughts.
I mean, it's making sure that you are utilizing everything that you get. And I think it's exactly what I was saying with Chris as far as making sure that every single carrot is being utilized the most, and that like even when you cut it off, you don't cut it off an inch down, you cut it off at the greens. And you know that every bit counts and every part makes a difference.
Right. I'm really interested in talking to Shelley Pingree. Do you know that name? Mm-hmm. Senator, or Congresswoman?
Yes,
Senator? Congresswoman. Yeah. Shelley Pingree, I think that. I've heard she's done a lot of work here in Maine to work with farms to make it easier on farms, to lower the costs to doing business, whether it be processing food within. Also, like this idea of what is like true costs. What's it called? True costs accounting, where it's like that food might be cheaper, but what is the true cost, the impact of doing food cheaply on the environment? And like, you know, the surface value of that product over here might be less, but like, what is the impact that's having on society? What's the true cost? And to really like be transparent about where we're getting our food, and like maybe you're paying upfront more for this, but where's that money going? Is it making your community healthier? Is it providing security and safety within that community? So like I think she's doing a lot of work on this, and I'm having her on the show. Cool. So I'm excited to dive into that. Do you have any questions I should ask her, do you think, being a business owner here in Portland?
No, but I can talk about something else in particular that has to do with farms.
Go for it.
And something that we do in order to support our farmers. So, I mean, my husband has a meeting with two of the different farmers every year at the beginning of the season to talk about what they want them to grow. And they will grow things specifically for us. And we're not the only ones that they're having these conversations with, but every once in a while, a restaurant will ask them to grow something, but then they don't buy it when it becomes available. And we work with our farmers, and when they come up to us and they're like, oh my God, we have leaks coming out of our ears. We're like, well, looks like we're putting a leak dish on. Yeah. Because we want to be able to support our farmers and make sure that they have a good output for all of their stuff, so that way we can continue using them. Right. And Yeah, so I guess that's another way that we just support the farmers
back
in
to
general.
communication, bringing them into the conversation.
But then also having a conversation with them like, okay, yeah, we agree to buy 500 pounds of leeks from you because you have them coming out of the ears. Can you like lower it by 25 cents a pound maybe?
Yeah, help us out. Help us help you.
Yeah, because or else you're going to have a ton of leeks that are just going to go on the compost, and that helps nobody.
Right. Something's better than nothing. I've really enjoyed picking up the conversation with you today. We got to take a break, stretch a little bit before the rest of the ladies get here. A couple questions before we wrap up. What is one thing about your business, a value, a process, a system that makes you truly unstoppable?
Oh, willpower.
The mission statement is to change the world by inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. And I think we're going to do that by transforming one individual at a time. How have you personally transformed? How are you a better woman today than the woman you were when you started in this?
I mean, I think listening to what your employees actually have to say, and not just hearing it, but actually listening, and then altering your approach as a result.
Yeah. And the doozy question that gets the most eye rolls. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? See how consistent you are. I actually forget what you said the first time. I didn't write it down. I usually do.
I don't know. I re-listened to it to try to not be too repetitive, but I can't remember what I said.
I think the first thing you said was employees first.
Yeah,
I think you reinforced that.
I think if I could leave anything behind, the importance of life-work balance, and that is something that we stress a lot right now. And honestly something the pandemic taught us, and something that a lot of our younger generation staff has taught us, and that we ensure that we try our best to ensure our staff has a good life-work balance. And we actually just had one employee that was working with us part-time, and then I came to realize he was picking up shifts with us, and he essentially had five days, and then he was working at another place for 5 days. And I had an intervention with him and said, that's not okay. Like, I'm not okay with you working every single day and doubles on a lot of days. And you thinking if you just have one shift that day, that it's basically like a day off. That is not a day off. And, and I pulled him aside and said, we will not be scheduling you for more than your allotted shifts moving forward now that we're aware of this. And I was like, and I think you need to have a conversation with your other employer about it, because it's not fair for you. And then he got a little emotional, the fact that I was trying to stick up for him and stick up for his well-being, and the fact that I really cared about him.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's actually a full-time employee for us and doesn't work at the other place anymore.
Work-life balance.
1. Yeah, I mean, I'm going with, you're not the mistakes you make, you're how you fix them. And that, not to hide the mistakes, to make it known. And because if you're hiding it, then that doesn't help anybody.
2.
Find joy in what you're doing. And if you don't find joy in what you're doing, then you should probably not be doing it.
3. This has been so much fun. Obviously, I have to have you call somebody out. We are going to be speaking with Michelle and Ilma in a little bit. Teresa wasn't able to join us today.
I think she is.
She is?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Sweet. Even better. So I think we'll figure it out. I have enough mics. We'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it.
I'm good share. We're good sharers.
Okay, good. So we're going to be doing that in about 30 minutes, a little less. I got some microphones to set up, but who else should I talk to on a one-on-one basis?
Tom and Victoria Bartholomew.
They're
our business partners at Finestkind.
Tom and Victoria, look out. I'm coming after you. I can't wait to share your story. And this is where we say if there's anybody who's listening to this who wants to maybe follow you or maybe come work for you or has questions, is there a best way to connect?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook too, but yeah. And if you want to actually work for any of us, just go right onto our website or email info@central-provisions or info@tiporestaurant.com, all of those fun places.
Awesome. This is where I say thank you so much for taking the time to get vulnerable, to share your story, to share your knowledge, to pay it forward. I literally cannot do what I do without people like you being willing to speak to me. There is no questioning, Paige. You are unstoppable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.